I like that.
But after his young wife abruptly left him, Houston resigned the governorship without explanation, began drinking heavily, and fled to live with his Cherokee friends. His career in the United States seemed over. Sam Houston headed for Texas.
An eagle swooped down near my head, and then soaring aloft with wildest screams was lost in the rays of the setting sun. I knew that a great destiny waited for me in the west. Sam Houston.
There were now nearly 35,000 American-born immigrants and their slaves in Texas, 10 times the number of Spanish-speaking Tejanos. Despite growing tensions, and despite their many differences, both groups agreed on one thing. They resented taking orders from far-off Mexico City. Then, in 1835, General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna was elected President of Mexico. At first, he promised to restore greater autonomy to Texas. Instead, Santa Anna declared himself dictator, the Napoleon of the West, and when Texans rebelled and talked of independence, he led an army north, 5,300 men, flying a black flag that meant no quarter.
Let each man come with a good rifle and 100 rounds of ammunition, and come soon. Sam Houston.
Because of his past military experience, Sam Houston was put in command of Texan forces. He called for more men, from Texas and from the United States. In Washington, President Andrew Jackson ordered a policy of strict neutrality. He wanted to buy Texas, not fight a war over it. But Texas meetings were held all over the country. Eager young men signed up by the battalion. In San Antonio, 146 men gathered at an old Spanish mission called the Alamo to stop Santa Anna's army. Houston believed the Alamo was impossible to defend and ordered it blown up. But the men inside, including an alcoholic adventurer named Jim Bowie and a former Tennessee congressman named Davy Crockett, decided on their own to stay and fight. On February 24, 1836, Santa Anna reached San Antonio and demanded that the Alamo's occupants surrender or be annihilated. Its commander, William Barrett Travis, answered with a cannon shot. The Mexicans settled in for a siege. Travis scribbled out an urgent plea for reinforcements and entrusted it to a 30-year-old captain of the Texas Army, a Tejano named Juan Seguin. He slipped through the Mexican lines and delivered the call for help. Meanwhile, in a rundown farmhouse in the tiny settlement of Washington on the Brazos, 59 men, including 3 Tejanos, declared Texas an independent republic and hammered out a constitution modeled after that of the United States. But there would be no reinforcements for the Alamo. Houston still considered it folly for his outnumbered army to fight Santa Anna there. At 5 a.m. on the morning of March 6, 1836, after 13 days of siege, Santa Anna's bugler blew the degüello, the signal for death in the bull ring. 2,600 Mexican soldiers charged the Alamo into a hail of Texan gunfire. At least 600 Mexican soldiers died that morning, though Santa Anna would officially admit to just 70 deaths among his men. But the odds proved overwhelming. In a matter of hours, the Alamo was taken. And in the end, all its defenders, Americans and Tejanos alike, lay dead.
What is important about the Alamo is not the number of men or who they were or the various personalities, but the fact that this small group of men chose to defend an impossible position against a superior number and held it for 13 days. They chose this place knowing that it would mean sure death.
The killing went on. Santa Anna took a second fort called Goliad. Its defenders were pirates, he said, foreigners intent on stealing Mexican territory. He ordered 300 men, most of them Americans, to be shot and their corpses burned.
Our garrison was taken and massacred. If such conduct is not sufficient to arouse the patriotic feelings of the Sons of Liberty, I know not what will. Rather than be driven out of this country, I will leave my bones to blanch on the plains of Texas. Private G.A. Giddings.
Santa Anna pushed on. Now, all that stood between him and the defenseless settlements in East Texas was a small, poorly trained army of volunteers and their erratic and unpredictable commander, Sam Houston.
A Wiccan is your guardian spirit, and from this guardian spirit you get your power. And I collected about 16 of them, and the most interesting that I have is the one of my father's, because there were different animals that talked to him at the same time, and each one of them gave him this certain thing. The chipmunk said, "Well, I'll give you a lot of good fast movements, you will be a quick person," and the badger says, "I will give you steadfastness, you will be strong." And the dog said, "I'm going to give him love and friendship, I'm going to be with him all the time." And that was his guardian spirit.
Back in 1831, 4 Indians, including 3 Nez Perce from the tribe who had helped Lewis and Clark survive their time in the Pacific Northwest, traveled eastward, over the mountains and across the plains, nearly 2,000 miles to St. Louis. They had come, they said, because they had heard of a black book that gave whoever possessed it additional power and prestige.
They were looking for the Bible, and they thought that they would get power from it, just like that they would get from their Wiccan.
A highly embellished account of the Indians' journey made its way into the Protestant missionary press. The Nez Perce, it said, were pleading for salvation. In the spring of 1836, a small party of missionaries responded and began the long trek from Missouri to the British trading post of Fort Vancouver, along a route that would soon be called the Oregon Trail.
In the deserts let me labor, on the mountains let me tell how he died, the blessed Savior, to redeem a world from hell. Let me hasten, foreign heathen lands to dwell.
Among the Christian pioneers were Dr. Marcus Whitman and his young wife, Narcissa, who from her earliest childhood had dreamed of becoming a missionary. She had married Whitman specifically to go west and spread the word of Christ to those in need of it.
Our desire now is to be useful to these benighted